If you've been out of the loop and are wondering whether to come back to Destiny 2 with the new expansion dropping in the summer, which of course is Edge of Fate, then today we're going to round up the biggest changes that'll be arriving alongside that new content drop, which of course affect existing long-term players of Destiny, but also are going to mix things up significantly for any folks who haven't played for a long time, or indeed for new players of the game. And in the video today, we'll round up the key details about the content roadmap coming up in the next year, the introduction of a seasonal hub that's going to change how we interact with content coming in and out of Destiny 2, as well as additional changes to rewards passes, the portal, new tiers for weapons and armor which are being introduced, as well as significant reworks for the sandbox systems, armor stats, weapon perks, the future of various different events in the game, as well as new seasonal events, raid challenge updates, and a bunch of other items in the video. So if you guys enjoy this one, be sure to give me your thoughts on Edge of Fate down in the comments section, but now let's get into it. And the first big change we should talk about is Bungie's new content format. If you've been up to date with all of the Edge of Fate news, you probably already know this, but Bungie are moving to a system where they drop 2 expansions per year, and they've likened these to something similar to Rise of Iron in terms of the size of the DLCs. But additionally, there'll be 2 seasons per year, which contain additional major updates. So while Edge of Fate, the new expansion for D2, arrives on July 15th, following that, on September 9th, we'll get an additional major update called Ash and Iron, which will be a sort of Rise of Iron or Plaguelands themed content drop. Then towards the end of 2025, we'll get a DLC called Renegades, which will be inspired by Star Wars, and that will be followed by a major update called Shadow and Order on the 3rd of March. The second big component that Bungie will change is that they'll introduce a new seasonal hub, so for all sort of season objectives, progression, it'll be focused in this tab, and this will contain triumphs, essentially seasonal challenges, as well as objectives and rewards which focus on each of the seasonal content drops. There'll also be a rank path, and this will drop additional currencies and upgrades associated with progressing through seasons, so there'll be items like unstable cores, which are required for power leveling gear into the seasonal power range, and that'll link to any gear over power 200. But alongside that, Bungie will be changing reward passes, so if you own the annual pass, the full edition of Edge of Fate, the reward passes will be included. Separate purchases of them will be for 1,000 silver, but Bungie will no longer lock the ranks to specific acts or anything like that, so you'll technically be able to level all the way through the pass as quickly as you can. And there'll be a bunch of different boosts that they'll put in the season pass, including those that boost scores in portal activities, essentially meaning we can get better rewards. Boosts that improve desirable armor and weapon drops, actually affecting the perks on pieces of gear, and additional XP boosts. Then at the end of the pass, there'll be an extra 10 ranks. Each of those will require 500,000 XP to upgrade, but Bungie say they've added additional special rewards for those ranks for any folks who want to push past rank 100. Next up though, another major change that Bungie will introduce is the portal, and this will be a new sort of director for the game. And we can see the front page of it will highlight content from the latest expansion, as well as current and upcoming events like Solstice or Arms Week. We'll touch on Arms Week in a moment, but there'll be additional playlists like Solo Ops, Fireteam Ops, Pinnacle, and Crucible Ops that feature activities that rotate, and some of the featured activities will have specific rewards which are outlined before we actually play them. So the goal is to make it easier to actually obtain power rewards or specific pieces of gear, as there'll be numerous different opportunities on every weekly reset. On top of that, through the portal, we can adjust activity difficulty, with harder difficulties dropping higher tiers of legendary weapons and armor. And so gear tiers is the next big change for the expansion. Both weapons and armor will drop at tiers between 1 and 5. Obviously, tier 1 will be very baseline pieces of gear, and tier 5 gear will drop from the harder activities in the game. As we can see from the chart here, tier 4 and 5 armor will drop with the highest stats, as well as additional mod energy and randomly tuned stats. Plus Bungie have done a big stat and armor rework, introducing new stats such as the weapon stat, which will now be baked into armor and actually improves things like reload and handling. Plus every single stat will have an enhanced benefit, which is unlocked after we get a stat beyond level 100. So in the case of the weapon stat, ammo bricks from defeated targets have a chance to contain additional rounds, plus it will increase weapon damage against bosses and opposing guardians. Similar equivalent stats and enhancements will be available across the core 6 armor stats. And on top of that, armor will now drop with set bonuses, so wearing 2 pieces of armor from the same set will unlock one of the perks, and 4 pieces will unlock a second perk. If you're curious what they do, you can see some of them on the screen right there. On top of that though, the stat rework will bucket particular pieces of armor into specific stats, so Paragon will focus on primarily super and melee stats, Grenadier will be grenade and super, Specialist will be class and weapons, and then Brawler will be melee and health. Bulwark will be health and class, with Gunner being weapons and grenades. Sounds a bit complicated at first, but Bungie's overall goal is that once players have their heads around these systems, it will make it easier to identify pieces of gear that may or may not be useful, and generally make build crafting a bit more understandable as well. The tier system will also affect weapons, so for weapon tiers, tier 3 weapons are essentially the equivalent to the best weapons we have right now, with 2 enhanced traits. But as we can see, this is a tier 5 weapons, and tier 5s will drop with 3 different traits in each slot that of course can be selected, as well as enhancements on every single slot, so that will include barrels and magazines, origin traits, and even mods. So some big shakeups for weapons and armor, and of course the content that we'll be playing, as if we're targeting tier 5 loot, we'll be looking to play the hardest activities in the game. Other big updates include that Bungie are introducing a shooting range in the tower. We'll be able to spawn in a whole different bunch of enemies here, bosses, and targets where we can test damage, with up to 6 players able to enter the shooting range, so you could do DPS battles and things like that, as it will actually have tooltips showing off how much damage players have done. In addition to that, there'll be an event called Arms Week that rolls around, and we'll perhaps be seeing this once every few weeks. And when Arms Week comes up, it will feature a new weapon, and they have these kind of interesting unique skins on them, and it will basically be a week-long event to farm as many rolls on that weapon as possible. That's just one of the introductions. Otherwise, Bungie will rework Iron Banner, and all events will have a similar tab to the Seasonal Hub, or Arms Week that we can see right here, with reward tracks, challenges, and objectives. Although, Iron Banner won't return until September, when the Ash and Iron update drops, which is looking like it's going to be, like I said, sort of a Rise of Iron Plaguelands themed content drop. And Saladin will return to the game then as well. Other seasonal events, such as Solstice of Heroes, will get a similar treatment and will now start featuring holofoil weapons, and we'll be able to farm all the way up to tier 5 versions of these as well. So Bungie are doing plenty of things to try and change up the core hobby when it comes to Destiny 2. Then, aside from all of these changes, we will of course be now getting 1 raid and 1 dungeon per year in each of the major content drops. Edge of Fate will have a new raid that drops on July 19th, but later on, when the Ash and Iron update comes out in September, Bungie have said the raid will receive a challenge update which adds new rewards, mechanics, new feats, and potentially even new encounters. And the scope of the updates for the raid will mean that it has a raid race event, where new and exclusive rewards will be added, and players will get the opportunity to earn new weapons and the catalyst for the raid's exotic weapons. So for the first time, these pieces of content will get sort of mid-season updates, which add a relatively significant amount of changes for it. So there we go, guys. Those are the major changes coming up in the next few months as we head into the next expansion and beyond. I'd love to hear, if you're an established player, how are you feeling about all of these Edge of Fate changes? But additionally, I'll be curious to get an idea of how lapsed players, or any folks who feel like coming back to Destiny 2, feel about what Bungie have discussed right here. So share your thoughts down below, but if you found the video helpful, a rating really does help me out on the channel. Get subscribed for more Edge of Fate content as well, but otherwise, cheers for watching, and I hope you guys have an awesome day.